Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. Yunxiao turned to look at Elder Feng. If he glanced at him inadvertently, he would find the old man as ordinary and unremarkable as he was. Even if he gave him a light glance, he would not find anything special about him. However, if one looked closely at the Kasaya, one would realize that one could not see his true face. It only gave one a sense of trance, and his face was faintly discernible. This old man is really strong. It's very likely that he's a half-step martial emperor. Yunxiao frowned inwardly. He did not know whether the old man had been roped in by Tiandijuan. If not, he would be in a much more dangerous situation when two half-step martial emperors attacked him at the same time. Sect Master Liang is here too. Sorry for not welcoming you. On the viewing platform, Yingrong stood up with a smile. Under the protection of a group of people, a middle-aged man in white walked over with a smile. He was dressed like a scholar and had the aura of a sect leader. He was the sect leader of the New Moon sect, Shao Minghui. The New Moon sect was not a weak local power in Southfire City, and it had played an extremely important role in resisting the Chamber of Commerce. Once again, Yunxiao saw a familiar face. Liang Quan was also in the crowd behind Shao Minghui, but he had a straight face and an absent-minded look, as if he had something very deep in his heart. There was also a slightly calmer man, who looked similar to Liang Quan, following behind Shao Minghui. He should be the deputy sect leader, Liang Yi. Elder, he is too polite. It is already a great honor for Minghui to have Elder Yu accompanying him. Shao Minghui was gentle and elegant. He responded very generously and appropriately. Everyone was already familiar with each other. An old man in a gray robe beside Shao Minghui stroked his beard and laughed, being able to talk with Sect Master Shao, this you has benefited a lot. He made an inviting gesture and arranged for Shao Minghui to sit on the left side of the front row, while he himself sat down between Yingrong and Elder Feng on the right side. He was obviously the second in command among the elders, and his strength was also extraordinary. There were still 4 empty seats in the middle, probably reserved for the few people with the highest status in Southfire City. The 10 great elders of the Big Dipper sect have all arrived. I've seen a few elders appear in succession these few days, and now they're all here. Following Elder Yu's arrival, all 10 elders of the Big Dipper sect arrived, with Elder Feng as their leader. His eyes were still closed, and he paid no attention to the outside world. The last one was the 1-star Marshal Supreme, Elder Lu. Nonsense, don't you know what day it is today? These 20 disciples who are going to be in the finals are basically all disciples of these elders. Of course, I have to be concerned. Yes, it's said that if you can make it into the top 10, the teaching elders will also have great benefits. You must note that these elders are all martial honors and any one of them has great power in Manhua City. Look, the 2 sect masters of the Wufu sect have arrived. The sect leader of the Big Dipper sect, Zhang Linghua, and the sect leader of the Sky Scorpion sect, Li Fengyu. Yunxiao looked in the direction of a beam of light and saw several figures in the viewing gallery. The man on the left was wearing a long green robe, with deep and dark eyes, but his face was slightly pale, and he seemed to be in low spirits. The person on the right was dressed in a light mist luai. He had a relatively strong physique, and his every movement revealed a kind of unhurried calmness. It was the Sky Scorpion sect leader, Li Fengyu. The arrival of the 2 immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the viewing gallery. Even Elder Feng opened his eyes slightly and nodded at the 2 of them. Yunxiao carefully sent his divine sense over, but it was immediately blocked by an invisible force. Instead, the force followed his divine sense and followed him. His expression changed slightly and he decisively cut off his divine sense, pretending to be an ordinary cultivator and looking at the several people in the audience with admiration. Zhang Linghua frowned slightly and glanced at Yunxiao with a suspicious look on her face, but she only snorted lightly and did not take it seriously. Brother Zhang, what's wrong? Li Fengyu saw that there was something wrong with his expression and asked in surprise. I'm fine, Zhang Linghua shook her head and smiled. Brother Li, please take a seat. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. They went forward and sat on the seats on the left in the middle, leaving 2 empty seats. Everyone's eyes were cold, knowing that they were left for the Chamber of Commerce. Although there were constant hidden fights, everyone still got along harmoniously on the surface. This Li Yunxiao's strength is very strong. He actually set up a divine sense barrier. I can't figure out his background. In fact, it was not that his divine sense was not strong enough, but if he were too brazen, he would be discovered by the other party very soon. However, as long as he had not reached the rank of a martial supreme, he did not need to worry too much. After Zhang Linghua sat down, she said, "Let's start." Behind him, Elder Yu stood up and transmitted his voice, "Don't wait for Lei Qianqian." Zhang Linghua waved her hand and interrupted him. She said coldly, "We're already prepared. Since they don't want to come, then they don't need to come." Elder Yu nodded his head lightly and walked forward. He said loudly, "The last day of the Big Dipper sex competition will now begin. Now, according to the order of drawing lots, please enter the arena one by one." Sect leader Zhang, "We're just half a step late, and you're going to turn us away?" A clear voice came from the distance and reverberated throughout the mountain. Everyone looked out, but it was empty. There was no one. It was empty outside the mountain, so he didn't know where the voice came from. Zhang Linghua sneered and waved her hand. Everyone felt a light breeze blowing past them, and they felt unspeakably comfortable. It blew towards the mountain, and a white ray of light surged up from the top of the mountain, forming a light curtain that covered the entire mountain peak, isolating it from the outside world. Sect leader Zhang is too stingy. The voice rang out again, and a sound wave spread out in the air like a wave, pushing against the white defense and deforming it. A 7th-tier Golden Sun battleship appeared in the sky, blocking out the sun. The entire mountain became dark. The battleship slowly approached, as if it was going to crash into the defense. The faces of everyone on the viewing platform changed, each and every one of them glaring at him. The rogue cultivators below were all shocked as well, and fear spread in their hearts. Everyone knew the relationship between the Chamber of Commerce and the local forces. Zhang Linghua stood up from her seat and said with a sharp gaze, "Ing Lin, come to my Big Dipper sect on a warship. I really hope you can give me an explanation." A hearty laugh came from the battleship, and a few figures emerged from it. The man in the lead was wearing a purple robe with dragon patterns embroidered on it. He grinned and made a hand seal. The Golden Sun battleship immediately transformed into a miniature ship that he held in his palm. This man was none other than the president of the Thunderwind Chamber of Commerce's branch in South Fire City, Chu Lin. He laughed while holding the Golden Sun warship. "Sect leader Zhang, you worry too much. This Golden Sun battleship is my gift to the rising stars of the Big Dipper sect. It's the prize for the champion of the competition." As soon as these words came out, the crowd was in an uproar, all of them were shocked. Although the Golden Sun battleship was only a 7th-tier item, its value was definitely above that of an ordinary 8th-tier mystic weapon. In this era where alchemists and all kinds of natural treasures were scarce, even martial emperors rarely had 9th-tier mystic artifacts. An 8th-tier profound weapon was basically the most precious profound weapon that every cultivator dreamed of. The expressions of the young disciples of the Big Dipper sect on the viewing platform changed slightly, revealing an expression of surprise and uncertainty. This battleship was too large and they basically had no use for it. But if they were to auction it, they could definitely exchange it for a low-quality 8th-tier profound armament. Just thinking about it made him excited, especially Chengyu, who was the favorite to win the championship. He couldn't help but feel his palms sweat. "It's rare that sect leader Nie is so thoughtful," said Zhang Linghua indifferently. "However, don't make such a big move next time." This Zhang almost directly activated the mountain protecting Great Formation and blasted you all into dregs. His words were filled with endless coldness, and all the cultivators who were making a racket suddenly shut up. Only then did he remember the relationship between the two factions. His words were filled with coldness and contempt for the other party. Sect leader Zhang must be joking again. The Big Dipper sect's small mountain protecting formation is just a toy for children to play with. It's not worth mentioning in the eyes of our Thunderwind Chamber of Commerce. It's just good enough to scare children. Chu Lin flew down from the sky with the others, and after a round of sarcastic remarks, he laughed and said, "Today is your sex grand occasion, let's not talk about these boring things." "Indeed, please take a seat here," Li Fengyu also said with a dark face. "If it wasn't for the Big Dipper sex grand event today, you probably wouldn't be able to return." Chu Lin didn't mind and sat down beside the two of them. "By the way, I've seen Elder Lu of the Heavenly Scorpion sect before. Why hasn't he appeared for a long time? Did he meet with any accidents?" "You." Li Fengyu's expression changed drastically. The aura on his body moved, and he furiously said, "As expected, it was your doing." He clenched his 5 fingers so tightly that they made a crackling sound. He gritted his teeth and said, "Good, good, it's really good." Chu Lin sneered complacently, crossed his legs, and stopped talking. The person beside him was much calmer. He also sat on the 4th chair, not saying a word. Zhang Linghua glanced at the man, her pupils shrinking. "This scum looks unfamiliar. Is he a new lackey of your Thunderwind Chamber of Commerce?" The 4th person's face twitched slightly, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. Then, he returned to his calm expression and did not answer. "I almost forgot to introduce you," said Chu Lin with a laugh. "This is the president of the Sky Crane Business Council, Fang Tianhe. Everyone should have heard of him, right?" They didn't hide their words at all, and everyone present could hear them clearly. They were all drenched in cold sweat. If it was anyone else who spoke like that, they would have been killed by the other party. Yunxiao was taken aback as he looked at Fang Tianhe. It turned out that this man was the president of the Sky Crane Trade Union, who was closing in on the Purple Cloud Trade Union. He was indeed in cahoots with the Thunderwind Trade Union. And from the looks of it, he was still following Chu Lin's lead. The Sky Crane Merchant Association? Zhang Linghua's brows furrowed, but her expression relaxed and she smiled. "President Qian, you must be joking. There are so many miscellaneous chambers of commerce in the Merchant Union. Hundreds of them disappear every day and hundreds of new ones are established. The changes are too fast. How can I know so much? Maybe one day, the Thunderwind Chamber of Commerce will suddenly disappear. That's not surprising at all." Sect leader Zhang said so. "There is no chamber of commerce that will last forever in this world, and there is no force that will stand tall forever." Chu Lin didn't seem to mind at all. He smiled and said, "However, the Thunderwind Chamber of Commerce is a permanent member of the Business Alliance. By the time it disappears, I'm afraid that the Big Dipper sect and the Heavenly Scorpion sect will have long been gone." A gloomy expression appeared on Li Fengyu's face as he snorted, "A permanent member?" The Merchant Union's martial arts and sorcery conventions would be held in Songwei City in a month. It was said that several extremely powerful existences had emerged this time. Could the Thunderwind Chamber of Commerce secure their position this time? I'm not optimistic about you guys, and I'm planning to go to Songwei City to open a bet and bet that you guys will lose. I'll come back after earning a lot of money. "Welcome, welcome, Sect Leader Li," Chu Lin said with a smile. "You're welcome to give us vitality stones. The Thunderwind Chamber of Commerce will definitely raise a lot of money to bet with you." The words of the few people were full of ridicule, attacking each other, unwilling to back down in the slightest, and the smell of gunpowder was also getting stronger and stronger. However, they all controlled themselves very well and did not make a move. Everyone was an old fox. It was fine if they fought verbally, but if they really fought, it would be a matter of great harm to their bones and vitality. When they were almost done attacking each other, Zhang Linghua said, "Let's start the competition." Elder Yu nodded his head slightly before stepping forward and shouting, "All disciples, please enter the arena according to the order of drawing lots." In order to select the 10 pro-disciples in the most reasonable way, the Big Dipper sect's competition rules were also very reasonable. They would be divided into 2 sects according to their cultivation base, and they would draw lots to fight each other. This way, they could avoid disciples of similar strength being eliminated from each other to the greatest extent. The first to go on stage was Mei Dong. She gently leaped up from the viewing platform, like a small green flower that had suddenly bloomed. The butterflies on her long dress danced along with her body, giving off a simple and natural beauty in the mountains, causing everyone's eyes to light up. Mei Dong leaped onto the largest arena and sneaked a glance at Yunxiao, who was in the crowd. When she saw him smiling at her, she blushed and quickly turned her eyes away. "Young Master Yun, this little girl seems to be interested in you," Ping Yingyi said softly. Yunxiao turned his head and said, "Are you jealous?" A look of admiration appeared in Chu Lin's eyes as he praised, "This little girl is really not bad. She's pretty and talented. It's a pity that she cast pearls before swine." The other Big Dipper sect disciple gently flew up to the arena, looking very nervous. He was only a 3 stars martial grandmaster, and he was holding a 6th tier profound level treasured saber. He cupped his fists at Mei Dong and said with a bitter smile, "Junior sister Mei, please show some mercy later and give me some face." Mei Dong smiled. "Senior brother Yun, you're too humble. Please give way to junior sister." Senior brother Yun shook his head with a wry smile. He picked up the saber and waved it around. "Junior sister, please. I will do my best. Please don't be stingy with your teachings." After he finished speaking, he didn't hesitate. With the infusion of vital qi, the treasured saber let out a trembling sound and attacked first. He knew the gap between him and Mei Dong. If he had made the first move, he might have been able to hold on for a while longer, and even have a chance of winning. Mei Dong stood unmoving. She stretched out her arms and moved forward. Her arms moved slightly like a green water bird that was lightly swimming. An invisible force appeared around her body, forming a circular defensive barrier. Clang! Senior brother Yun's treasured saber came straight down and landed on the defensive barrier. The blade stopped halfway through, blocked by the spiritual pressure and unable to go any deeper. What? Senior brother Yun's eyes widened in disbelief. Bean-sized beads of cold sweat trickled down his forehead. How could the gap be so big? He couldn't even break through the opponent's defense. What was he supposed to do? Unseal. He roared in shock and anger. The surging yuan power crazily poured into the 6th tier profound weapon, and the blade light instantly grew dramatically. The spiritual pressure that it felt was no longer as strong as before, and it gradually pierced into the weapon. Mei Dong's expression didn't change. Although her defensive power was constantly being shattered, she was still at ease. She retracted her hands, and the circular defense instantly disappeared. The saber light suddenly stabbed upwards, and she lightly stepped back. Her right hand's 5 fingers closed together, and she slapped the back of the saber. Bang! The treasured saber was directly shaken to the side, and the powerful force collided with the saber light. The backlash made senior brother Yun's arm numb, and he couldn't hold the hilt. After Mei Dong struck out with her palm, she leaned forward and punched senior brother Yun's right shoulder with her left hand, sending him flying out of the arena. The entire competition only lasted for a few breaths. It was simple and clear, without any sloppiness. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then the whole venue burst into applause and cheers. Mei Dong's face was calm, and she didn't even take a breath. She stood there quietly after sending out a palm and a fist. Under the applause of the crowd, she bowed neither humbly nor arrogantly. "Thank you for letting me win, senior brother Yun." Senior brother Yun stood up from the outside of the arena. He felt that his right side was numb and cold, and he couldn't feel anything at all. He smiled bitterly and said, "It's because junior sister is too strong. Senior brother is convinced of his defeat." He didn't think there was anything to be embarrassed about, so he put away the treasured saber and returned to the viewing platform. Li Fengyu's eyes flickered as he praised, "The Big Dipper sect is indeed full of talented people. Not only does it have Chengyu, who is close to the martial emperor realm, but Mei Dong's talent is even higher than Chengyu's." Zhang Linghua smiled and didn't say anything. Gao Lin's face was filled with silence, and he didn't say anything to mock him. When the other 18 participating disciples on the viewing platform heard Li Fengyu's praise, they all had different expressions, each with their own thoughts. Changyu's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness, but but he soon regained his calm. Yuan Shoshuang was also among them. Her face was scarier than anyone else's, and her fingers were almost digging into her palm. Healing was also very satisfied with Mei Dong's performance. She nodded her head approvingly to show her encouragement. The disciples who came up next were also fighting very fiercely. The surrounding martial artists were shouting again and again. There was no more relaxed confrontation like the first one. But Yunxiao was not interested in all this at all. He kept yawning and almost fell asleep. It wasn't until Chengyu, the number one disciple among the young disciples, went up that he opened his eyes slightly, wanting to see how strong this kid was. Changyu's opponent was sighing and mumbling about how unlucky he was. He was a big fat 5-stars martial grandmaster. He carried a big hammer and walked up to the ring in a funny way, which caused a burst of laughter. The fat man's master stood on the stage with a gloomy face. He suddenly shouted, "Bai Zimo, get your spirits up and be serious. If you don't perform to your best, you'll be in for a good time." The fat man's fat jiggled and he hurriedly raised his spirit. He placed the big hammer on the stage and his aura continued to rise. His comical action made the crowd burst into laughter. Chengyu could not help but smile and said softly, "Junior brother Bai, don't be so nervous." "Humph." Bai Zimo snorted. "You're my opponent. How can I not be nervous?" "Senior brother Cheng," he whispered, "let me hold on a little longer. If I'm knocked down by you after a few moves, my master will scold me to death." A sly look flashed across the fat man's face. While he was talking, he suddenly made a move. His short and fat leg kicked the copper hammer. With a clang, the hammer flew up like a meteor and arrived in front of Chengyu in an instant. This time, the attack was as fast as lightning. The light on the hammer grew brighter, like a fireball emitting an intense light. Bai Zimo poured all his strength into it, planning to succeed with a sneak attack. This came down too suddenly, and the people around didn't react in time. They all scolded this fatty for being too cunning. Changyu's pupils shrank and a look of ridicule appeared on his face as he snorted inwardly. "Humph, a few moves? Do you think you can take a few moves from me?" Without thinking, he threw a punch at the huge hammer with his bare fist. Bang! Under everyone's shocked gazes, the copper hammer was actually blocked by a small punch. Under the extremely strong pressure emitted from the tip of Changyu's fist, the hammer suddenly bounced off. The huge hammer changed shape at a visible rate, turning into an oval. Then, it bounced off, and the huge force of the rebound was all transmitted to Bai Zimo. With a cold snort, Chengyu once again turned his fist into a palm and caught up to the hammer. With a bang, the hammer accelerated its power and instantly hit Bai Zimo's body, sending him flying with his fat body. Bai Zimo did not even manage to make a sound before he turned into a shooting star and was sent flying hundreds of meters, falling into the valley. This change happened too quickly. Before everyone could react to Bai Zimo's despicable and cunning actions, they realized that the fatty was no longer in sight. Everyone was in shock. Bai Zimo. Bai Zimo's master, who was on the viewing platform, was shocked. He turned into a stream of light and rushed into the valley. Changyu's face was cold as he stood on the stage. His eyes swept across the viewing platform complacently, especially pausing on Mei Dong. For a moment before disappearing. Elder Yu's expression darkened as he said, "Chengyu, that punch of yours had already decided the outcome of the battle, so why did you follow up with a palm strike?" With such a heavy blow, Bai Zimo's life was in danger. "Don't you know that in a competition between fellow disciples, you should stop when you're done?" Chengyu could hear the deep reproachful tone in his words and snorted in dissatisfaction. "It was that damn fat pig who ambushed me first. Elder Yu didn't condemn the person who sneaked an attack, but instead blamed me for being ruthless. If it wasn't for my extraordinary strength, I'm afraid I would be the one lying on the arena now. I wonder if Elder Yu will also uphold justice for me at that time?" Anger flashed across Elder Yu's face and he was about to scold. Zhang Linghua raised her hand and stopped him. Next. Seeing that the sect master had also come out to protect him, Chengyu was secretly happy and flew back to the stands. This disciple is quite interesting, sect leader Sheng, said Gao Lin suddenly with a smile. The Big Dipper sect is indeed full of talents and doesn't lack any kind of people. Same to you, Zhang Linghua replied indifferently. Elder Yu also considered that it was not appropriate to argue with Cheng Yu in this situation, so he announced the start of the next round. Yunxiao shook his head slightly, as if he also did not like Cheng Yu. Ping Yingyi sneered. This guy thinks he's smart and wants to show off his strength. In the end, he left a very bad impression on these big bosses. He even praised himself and was self-satisfied. He's so full of himself that he can't achieve great things. The results of the top 10 were announced very quickly. The next round would be the ranking battle between the top 10. Everyone's face was filled with joy. It was already a fact that they had become the sect master's personal disciple. As for the top 10 ranking battle, only a few people had such thoughts, because only the top 3 could make a request to the sect master. Cheng Yu and Shi Kaishan had basically been decided internally, and there was only one spot left. Only a limited number of people were qualified to fight for it. Zhang Linghua looked at the high-spirited crowd and smiled. I was the same as you all back then. I walked out of this arena. I hope that the Big Dipper sect can become one of the top sects in the eastern region. Everyone who talks about my Big Dipper sect will be filled with deep respect. I definitely won't let sect master down. The 10 of them felt their blood boiling as they shouted in unison. Their voices shook the valley and echoed continuously. Even Gao Lin's expression changed slightly. Zhang Linghua nodded in satisfaction, signaling for Elder Yu to continue. Elder Yu took out 10 small balls. There are 5 groups of numbers here. If you get 2 with the same number, you'll have to compete. 10 rays of light shot out from his hand. The 10 disciples were shocked and chased after them one after another. Each of them reached out to grab the light. Cheng Yu grabbed one first and spread his hands. The ball of light condensed into a small ball in his hand, with a bright red one on it. The rest of the people's hearts tightened, and they carefully opened their hands, afraid that they would have the same name as Cheng Yu. Under the flickering light, they began to condense one by one. Mei Dong's expression changed drastically. The word "one" was clearly printed on the ball in her hand. Everyone's eyes fell on her hand. Hearing this, they all heaved a sigh of relief, then gloated. Yuan Shoshuang couldn't help but giggle and said, Junior sister Dong is really lucky to have the opportunity to ask senior brother Cheng Yu for advice. We're all so envious. Mei Dong's face was filled with despair, and her eyes suddenly became empty and lifeless. Cheng Yu was slightly stunned, and then he snorted coldly, revealing a cold smile. Yingrong looked from afar and frowned. She waved Mei Dong over and said, Dong, don't have too much of a psychological burden. This is also a good opportunity to test yourself and see how big the gap between you and Cheng Yu is. I think this is a good thing. Mei Dong pursed her pale lips and shook her head slightly. What's wrong? Do you have something on your mind? Yingrong was taken aback and frowned. Mei Dong didn't say a word. After a long while, she shook her head and said in a low voice, No, I didn't. Yingrong patted her shoulder to encourage her. Don't give yourself too much pressure, just do your best. As for Cheng Yu, although he sent by Zemo flying with a single move, he wouldn't dare to do that to you. As long as I'm here, I won't let you get hurt. Mei Dong's heart felt warm as she softly responded. The number plate ball was in her hand and had already been crushed into a ball. It was completely shapeless. After drawing lots, Elder Yu said, Let's start. You may not have been able to display your full potential in the previous matches. This round will be the toughest match for everyone. Because the strength of any fellow sect member could not be tested. The 2 number ones, come on stage now. As soon as he finished speaking, Cheng Yu looked up at the sky and laughed. He flew down from the viewing platform in an extremely carefree manner, his face still maintaining a calm smile, as if he did not care about any of the matches at all, and was just playing around. He was the only one who had the strength to have such an attitude. Everyone was waiting to see who the unlucky person he would be facing off against would be. They saw Mei Dong, this little green flower, float down. Her face was ashen, but it made her look even more pure and moving. What? It's her. Everyone was shocked, shaking their heads and sighing in regret. Mei Dong's fresh and pleasant image and extraordinary strength instantly became the one with the most fans. When everyone saw that Cheng Yu's opponent was her, they all showed bitter faces and sighed. Cheng Yu extended his hand gracefully and chuckled. Junior sister Mei is known as the most talented person in the Big Dipper sect. I've been suffering because I didn't have the chance to see her. Today, I can fulfill my wish by chance. Mei Dong took a light breath to calm herself down. A sword appeared in her hand and she pointed it at Cheng Yu. She scolded, "Senior brother Cheng, I will do my best. I don't care who my opponent is, I must enter the top 3. Cheng Yu was stunned, and his face immediately darkened. Must he enter the top 3? You dare to say such words in front of me? I originally planned to play with you a little longer, but it seems that you don't need it anymore. Junior sister Mei, then let's hurry up. It's getting late. The senior and junior brothers behind are still waiting for the competition." There was a hint of coldness in his words, and Heingrong frowned upon hearing it, becoming somewhat vigilant.